One peaceful, ordinary day, people suddenly turned to the sky, noticing a strange phenomenon. It was the outbreak. A massive hole opened up in the sky, and through it, monsters spilled out across the earth, causing chaos everywhere. Cities soon turned to rubble, and people hid to try and survive. Mankind was in despair. However, a beacon of hope shone upon those who had lost faith, signaling that it wasn't the end for humanity. Some people were granted special abilities and named hunters, becoming the saviors of humanity. The blessing bestowed upon hunters that made them special were traits. Someone is currently explaining all this to someone else. The lecturer, visibly angry, claims that there's no hunter worth anything. He asserts to a small boy that today's hunters are hopeless, relying solely on their traits and dying off. The little boy's name is Shin Yu-sung, and he is 5 years old. The old man tutoring him asks what a hunter needs to survive, and Shin raises his hand to answer, a strength. The man agrees that a hunter relies solely on their strength and should be able to defeat enemies with a single punch. He reveals that it's the reason why he brought Shin from the orphanage. He says Shin is born with the perfect body. The man explains about the 9 in pathways being blocked. He says that Shin's 9 blocked in pathways grant him an exceptional mind, godlike looks, and abundant mana. Shin looks terrified and asks if he will die when the man says he will likely croak much earlier. The man laughs heartily, muttering that Shin is impatient as he resurrects his puppet. Shin's eyes sparkle with curiosity as the man explains that his abundance of bodily yang energy cures the negative effects of the 9 blocked in pathways. The man then pats Shin's shoulder and claims his rare physique will never appear again in human history. With a grin, he says only he can help Shin utilize his strength properly and asks if he will follow him. Shin agrees to be trained by the man as the man lifts him up, laughing. And so, day 1 of training starts. Now it's already day 711. And Shin has just managed to kill a massive wild boar-like monster. He is already 7 and covered in the blood of the monster. His master arrives with first aid and mocks Shin for defeating the weak monster, claiming his rival once defeated a rank 2 monster at 7. Then he tells Shin to devote himself more to training, which Shin agrees to. It's day 1040 of training, and Shin has just felled a thick tree and is yelling that he did it. Currently 8 years old, Shin turns excitedly to his master and seeks his approval of his achievement. However, the master, instead of praising Shin, exclaims that it's dull. It's now day 1785 of training, and Shin is facing massive mantis monsters. He pulls back a punch and with massive force directs it at the monsters. And this way, with a single attack, the 10-year-old Shin defeats the monsters. Like always, the master tells him that his stance is still lacking and notes that with such a level of skill, Shin can never be a hunter. Shin agrees he has a long way to go as the master says they will sleep there and orders him to light a fire. It's day 2892 of training, and Shin, now 13, is about to have a friendly spar with his master. Before Shin can even move a step, the master charges at him with his punch raised. Shin reacts quickly and moves his fist in front of his face to defend. The master gives a booming laugh as his punch sends Shin crashing backward into a wall. Shin counterattacks as he sprints towards the master, who launches a punch at him. Shin swiftly dodges the punch and moves behind the master with a punch ready. With a determined look, he slams the punch at the master's stomach. But he is shocked as he sees that the master has stopped his powerful punch with a single finger. Laughing, the master tells Shin he has gotten pretty nimble. He raises his hand and grabs his head. He then pats Shin and, complimenting him, tells him that his posture has improved a lot. However, he also bellows at him that he cannot be conceited and reminds him that there are plenty of very powerful hunters. Shin, intimidated by his master's words, wonders if he will have to fight monsters like his master in the future. Despite all this pressure, he clenches his fist and declares that he will definitely be the greatest hunter. He gulps and states that he will work hard. The master tells Shin he has to train harder to become the strongest hunter and informs him they will have meat tonight. It's day 4421 of training, and Shin is meditating at the bottom of a massive waterfall. The master comes trotting towards him and says that he can't believe it's their last day of training together. Shin, who is now 17, steps out of the waterfall. He then gets dressed. The master notices that Shin is almost ready to depart. He flings something at Shin, which he catches. Shin sees that it's a bracelet, which suddenly begins glowing blue. From the bracelet, a hologram of his ID card emerges. Shin notices that it's a card of Jaeon Academy. The master explains that he has already sent a letter of recommendation to the academy. Shin joins his hands and in appreciation thanks the master for all his help till now. With this, Shin walks off to his next great adventure. In the world, there are countless other hunters whom Shin will encounter soon enough. In his next journey, Shin will experience many things unknown to him. But despite all these hardships, the master is certain that Shin will become the strongest of them all. After all, Shin was trained by the strongest hunter in the world himself. After the monster outbreak, humanity chose education as its method to counter. Various facilities were built to create strong, active hunters by providing the best education, called Hunter Academy. Academies train hunters with various weapons and provide information on monster characteristics. The academies also focus on strategies to raid dungeons and understanding traits. For 3 years, the students attend the academy to learn all the necessary information to become hunters. Among all the academies, the one recognized as the best is the Jaeon Academy, where Shin will be attending. Once Shin reaches the academy, he is welcomed by the headmaster, Jin Byong. The headmaster looks overjoyed seeing Shin and begins shaking his hands enthusiastically. He takes Shin to his office, offers him black tea, and asks how eager he is to enroll in Jaeon. The headmaster knows that Shin is the disciple of Yu Wonhak, and he seems overjoyed. He is also confident that Shin must have an incredible ability. Unable to contain his curiosity, the headmaster asks Shin if his trait is S rank. Shin claims his trait is F rank, which leaves the headmaster aghast. The headmaster laughs, thinking Shin is joking, as no disciple of the strongest hunter can have an F-rank trait. Still hopeful, the headmaster questions Shin if his trait is A rank, but Shin denies that and confirms it's F rank. The headmaster checks Shin's trait, sees it's F rank, and bellows in shock, saying he doesn't believe it. Shin smiles and says his master advised not to rely on his trait, while the headmaster, shaken, clutches his head. The headmaster gets on his feet and turns around in despair. Rage fills him as he realizes why that old man was being helpful to him. The headmaster claims he doesn't want to raise the number of F ranks in the academy further. But since he has promised the old man, he can't push Shin out of the academy. So he decides to give Shin a chance and reminds him that in Jaeon, skill is everything. With this, the headmaster tells Shin to prove his skills if he wishes to enroll in Jaeon even if he is an F rank. A mission has been passed around the academy where the students can try and defeat Shin and get 50 SP, school points, as a reward. A while later, 2 students who have learned about this mission are discussing it. A red-haired student expresses surprise that the Fist King's disciple is F rank and asks if defeating him earns 50 SP, which the guy confirms. The red-haired student is Ju Hajin, with a student ranking of 42. Hajin puts his arm around the guy's shoulder, points out that something is off, and suspects Shin might be a scammer. With a grin, Hajin asks if that's correct, to which the scared guy agrees. Hajin then gets up and instructs the guy to tell others in the class that he will be taking care of Shin. Hajin also mentions that if anyone opposes him, they can try fighting with him. He then leaves the room with a smile on his face. The guy mutters that it's over. Hajin, excited and confident that beating an F rank will be easy, wonders if the Fist King might take him as a disciple instead of Shin. Thinking about this, Hajin claims he is getting pumped up. Suddenly, he stumbles onto someone on the way and turning in anger, shouts at that person to watch where they are going. But he gets silent as he realizes who that person is. It's Adela Hortensia, with a student ranking of first. Hajin quickly runs away in fear. Meanwhile, Adela, hearing Fist King, remembers it very well. When she was young, her grandfather had told her about his ally, who was the strongest hunter. Her grandfather had said that his ally defeated a genius in a single breath and told Adela to remember the name Fist King, Yu Wonhak. Adela recalls she heard Shin is a disciple of Fist King, and she wonders if that's true. Shin should be able to get to a certain place. Shin, wearing his new school uniform, looks sharp and smart. A student asks Shin if the size fits, and Shin thanks that student and says the size is perfect. Lee Saiwoo, rank 72, claims he is good at such things. Shin flexes his arm, noting the dress is very comfortable to move in, while Saiwoo claims functionality is a priority for hunters. Saiwoo presses the watch on Shin's arm, summoning a barrier around him, and explains it can be used in danger. Saiwoo looks uncertain that Shin's first sparring partner is Hajin and thinks it's unfair for an enrollment test. At that moment, someone peeks through the door informing Shin it's time. Saiwoo wishes Shin luck for the test, telling him to win. Shin has a confident look on his face as he says he will definitely pass. The stage is set with Shin and Hajin standing face to face for their spar. Sitting beside the headmaster, Yuhana is the commentator for the match. She declares it is time to present the participants. First, she introduces Shin, followed by Hajin. Hana mentions that Hajin must be overwhelmed to be in this match and wonders what made him want to participate. Hajin responds to this, admitting he is feeling a bit nervous. He also claims that he entered the match to find out if Shin is really suited to enter Jaeon or if he is just a fraud. Hana and the headmaster look very pleased with this response from Hajin. With a smile, Hajin promises to uphold Jaeon Academy's name. A girl in the crowd points out that Hajin is competing only for the SP and asks if anyone wants to bet on the winner. Back in the ring, Hajin raises his fist and shouts out that he will show everyone. The commentator Hana declares the end of Hajin's interview and asks Shin if he can share a few words about how he is feeling. Shin closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. He speaks just a sentence, saying he will do his best. Grinning, Hajin says Shin is useless. The countdown for the match starts as Hajin calls Shin trash and says he will end the fight quickly. Hajin is ready to use his trait to defeat Shin as Hana gives permission to start the match. Before Hajin can think or react, Shin charges at him, startling him. Hajin's mouth is wide open in shock as Shin raises his leg and kicks Hajin in the face. The spectators are all bewildered seeing this. Hannah explains that Shin's single kick broke through Hajin's barrier and managed to knock him out. With this, Shin is announced the winner. A girl in the audience is surprised that Shin really won. Groaning with pain, Hajin opens his eyes. He is lying on a bed and asks where he is. The doctor tells him he is in the infirmary, and she hands Hajin a drink and tells him to drink it and rest. Taking a sip, Hajin recalls the fight and claims he didn't even see Shin coming at him. Moreover, he is unable to believe that Shin is really an F-rank student. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, the principal, looking pissed, has summoned Shin, but he forces a smile and congratulates Shin for officially being a student at Jaeon. He also claims he knew Shin would pass, as Shin thanks him. The principal thinks he worried for nothing as despite being F-ranked, Shin is still the disciple of the Fist King. He decides it's too early to judge Shin. He then tells Shin the entrance exam is just a start. He explains that if Shin wants to follow his master's footsteps, he has to aim for something, which is becoming one of the 7 rankers who represent Jaeon Academy. Shin considers this information as he knows that no F-rank student has joined the 7s. He asks if he can really make it to the 7s, and the principal confirms that he can. The principal says there's always a path to join the 7. At that moment, someone outside the door asks permission to enter. The principal seems to have been expecting that person and allows them to enter. The principal claims that since it's Shin's first time in the academy, he has called for someone to guide him. It's Lee Saiwoo, who waves happily at Shin. The students in the corridor all stare after Shin as he and Lee Saiwoo walk along. Shin thanks Saiwoo for agreeing to guide him. Saiwoo realizes he hasn't introduced himself to Shin and extends his arm, saying, his name is Lee Saiwoo. He also suggests Shin to call him just Saiwoo. Shin gives an appreciative smile as he shakes Saiwoo's hand, saying it's nice to meet him. Saiwoo claims he watched Shin's match and says it was incredible. He gives a satisfied look as he mentions it was an instant KO. While Saiwoo and Shin are busy in their conversation, someone arrives, seeing whom the other students hurry out of the way, all looking scared. The new arrival is a girl, who tells Saiwoo and Shin to get aside. The girl is wearing a black coat and has red eyes, and it's certain from her appearance that she is a bully. Saiwoo apologizes to the girl and moves out of the way quickly. But Shin doesn't budge, and Saiwoo turns to him and sees his reaction is blank. The girl gazes at Shin intently while the student standing beside her, Lee Hyuk, rank 2, warns Shin to move aside. But the girl claims that she and Shin know each other and exclaims she didn't expect to meet Shin there. Shin continues staring at the girl who leans towards him and mutters in his ear that Shin is their family's faulty produce. Saying this, she walks past Shin, who continues standing there like a statue. Saiwoo's mouth is wide open in shock as he finds out Shin is a part of the Shurno family. Meanwhile, Shin has gone into a kind of trance where he remembers his sister terrorizing him, calling him a failure. This causes Shin to get lost deeper into despair when suddenly someone shouts his name, snapping him back to reality. Saiwoo asks Shin if he is alright and, noticing his pale face, suggests Shin go and take rest in the dorm. Saiwoo also points out that it's raining outside, so it will be best to go to their dorms. With a gloomy look on his face, Shin agrees to Saiwoo's request. A while later, Saiwoo takes Shin to his dorm and opens the door. Seeing the small dorm, Saiwoo claims it's standard for new students and says he's sure Shin will quickly move up to better dorms. But Shin, who used to sleep on tree branches, exclaims his dorm is really good. Saiwoo hands over the key to Shin and tells him to feel free to ask if he has any questions. Shin thanks Saiwoo for his help that day. With this, Saiwoo leaves, waving goodbye to Shin. Shin takes off his clothes and takes a warm bath. He then wipes himself dry and from the freezer takes a banana juice. Feeling exhausted, Shin lies down on the bed to rest. As the rain hammers against the window, Shin gets reminded of a certain day when the weather was similar to now. When Shin was really young, his parents had taken him out on a car ride, and it was raining heavily. His parents had told him to understand their decision, and he had agreed. After some time, the car had stopped in front of an unknown place. Shin's parents had then taken him out of the car and handed him to another person. Doing this, his parents had got into the car and left, abandoning Shin to an orphanage. This memory was really a painful one for Shin. But despite this, he did not cry because he believed he was at fault. Shin had believed he couldn't fulfill his parents' expectations, and he thought he couldn't be like his older sister, so he got thrown away. Shin doesn't think of it as sad, as from the very beginning he was very weak. He always considered himself a failure as he was very different from his older sister. However, one day everything changed when the Fist King arrived at the orphanage. The Fist King somehow recognized Shin's true potential and asked him to go with him. But Shin, who had given up, said he didn't want to go anywhere as he was tired. To be fair, Shin was afraid he would disappoint himself if he grew expectations of himself. Moreover, He was afraid to disappoint others if they had expectations of him. The Fist King had considered all Shin said and told him he was wrong. The Fist King said that the strongest person is not someone who doesn't despair nor someone who doesn't fail. He had revealed he once was just like Shin. The Fist King had explained that the strongest fail more than anyone else, they despair more than anyone else, and offered to teach Shin. The Fist King had also mentioned that even if Shin cries and despairs, he would teach Shin to get back up. Saying this, the Fist King had extended his arm and told Shin he could become the strongest hunter. The Fist King had guaranteed this as being the strongest hunter himself. Shin had finally agreed and taken the Fist King's hand. Now in the present, Shin is a different person. Rather than pain, he has more happy memories, and he plans to use happy memories to overwrite the painful memories. Shin is confident he can overcome that painful experience. The rain continues pouring outside as Shin receives a message. He opens the message and sees it's from Saiwu. Shin gives a smile and replies to Saiwu that everything is under control now. Laying back on his bed, Shin notes that the important thing isn't the past but the present. It's morning, and the sun is shining brightly. Inside a dorm, the alarm clock rings loudly. Someone groans in sleep and extends their arm to turn off the alarm. It's a girl with long pink hair. She wakes up, yawns, and stretches her arm. She then makes toast and fries some bacon and eggs for breakfast. After that, she puts on her uniform and stands in front of the mirror. Seeing she looks good, she smiles. With that, she walks out of her dorm and heads to the academy. This girl transferred to Jaein Academy a month ago but still gets awestruck every time she walks to school. She finds Jaein Academy's building structure, its facilities, and all the rooms much better than all the other academies she knows. But she is aware that not all the facilities in the academy are open to everyone. Many are only given to the highest-ranking students, the sevens. Her name is Hanajima Sumire, and she is ranked 659th in the year. She longs to join the sevens. After a while, she arrives at the school. Looking up at the grand building, she acknowledges that her goals are still far beyond her reach. One of her classes is in the image room, and it's her first time being there. The teacher asks for everyone's attention. He introduces himself as Lin Xiao, and says it's nice to meet the students. One of the students notes that teacher Myung was supposed to teach the class. Xiao says Myung was scouted by China and left, assuring the students not to worry. He claims that he used to be a rank 5 hunter, which is why he got permission to teach in the image room. As Xiao continues speaking, Yusung and Saiwu come running, apologizing for being late. Saiwu, panting, says he was giving Yusung a tour and got distracted. Sumire looks surprised to see Yusung there as she had seen him in the fight the other day. Xiao recognizes Yusung and asks if he's the disciple of the Fist King, which Yusung affirms. Like others, Xiao also expresses surprise that a legendary hunter like the Fist King has an F-rank disciple like Yusung. But he senses a strange aura emitting from Yusung's body and, patting him on the shoulder, points out he's been training hard. Smiling, Yusung claims he's never missed a day of training yet. Xiao smiles back and praises Yusung for his attitude. The students are surprised to see an F-class student like Yusung being recognized by Xiao, a rank 5 hunter. Xiao then says he wants to check out Yusung's skills. He points out that the image room is the best place to verify one's strength. Xiao says he has confirmed the settings and explains Yusung can touch the hologram and choose a difficulty. Yusung says he understands and chooses hard mode and danger rank 3. Seeing this, the entire class, as well as the teacher, are shocked as the system begins applying the changes made by Yusung. Yusung then declares that he will be starting. Xiao, still looking uncertain, gives Yusung permission to enter. Xiao starts wondering if Yusung can really handle rank 3 difficulty and hard mode and finds it hard to tell if Yusung is bluffing. Once Yusung steps forward, the system begins generating the virtual environment. Once the image materialization completes, the image room now resembles a desert. Suddenly creatures with huge feet and sharp weapons arrive there. They are orcs, massive in size and strong-looking. The orc at the front asks Yusung how he dares invade their territory. The orc bellows at the others to kill Yusung and they begin charging forward. Yusung, who has his eyes closed, opens them, using the skill Heightened Focus. Yusung activates Heightened Focus and instantly senses a presence behind the large rock a few feet away. He realizes that those hidden behind the rock are 2 archers. Yusung believes that the orcs who are charging at him will tire him, so that those archers can finish him off easily. Yusung sees the orc's weapon closing in on his face, quickly decides on a course of action, and grabs the weapon. He then uses the weapon he grabbed to block the attacks from the other 2 orcs. Quickly, he snaps the weapon in 2 before raising his hand and grabbing onto the red orc's face. Yusung slams the orc onto the ground with force while the 2 others raise their weapons to strike him from behind. He reacts fast and uses his right hand to launch quick consecutive punches at the 2 orcs lunging at him. Just like that, the 3 warrior orcs are defeated. At that moment, those two archers shoot arrows straight at Yusung. The arrow is inches from Yusung's eyes when he suddenly disappears. The archers are startled, seeing Yusung vanish just like that. But they are unaware that Yusung has appeared right behind them as he grabs onto them and finishes them off. With this, Yusung successfully clears the training. He then walks forward, with a smile on his face. Saiwoo and Sumire are both open-mouthed in shock as it's revealed Yusung has set a new record. Even the teacher, Xiao, is astounded, seeing Yusung's fast movements. Xiao finally understands it's not a fluke and is confident Yusung can definitely aim for the sevens. After the class is over, Saiwoo, with his eyes sparkling, praises Yusung, saying he is amazing. He points out that Yusung set a new record in the very first class. Saiwoo also claims that with Yusung's skills, it's definitely possible, prompting Yusung to ask what is possible. Saiwoo mentions that the academy has rankings. He explains about the 7 students at the peak, who are called the sevens. Saiwoo points out that a student from the lower classes has never gotten into the sevens. Saying this, Saiwoo takes a sip of his soda while Yusung stares in silence. Meanwhile, Adela, who is checking the screen, sees something and is startled. It's the notice that says Yusung has created a new record by beating her previous one. She recognizes the name Shin Yusung. She also feels her heart starting to beat fast. She then remembers that Yusung's master was the only hunter to defeat her grandpa. But before she can overthink it, an alert on her watch informs her of a new message. The message is about the first semester exam of the academy. Back in his dorm, Saiwoo, who has seen the notice too, is chatting with Yusung about it. As Yusung scans his fingerprint, Saiwoo claims that in the exam, one needs to get lucky and receive a good partner. Saying so, Saiwoo asks Yusung who he partnered up with. Yusung mutters the name Hanajima Sumire. Meanwhile, Sumire, who has also seen that Yusung is her partner, shrieks out loud in shock. It's lunchtime and the students are in the cafeteria, all enjoying their lunch. A student claims that in the exam, surviving longer is more important than scoring high. 2 other girls are also busy discussing their exam partners. A rank 57 and a rank 52 student seem to be in a beef, each giving the other threatening looks. Yusung looks around and seeing all this, points out that everyone is busy talking about the exam. Saiwoo, who is sitting with Yusung, claims that the exams determine which class you end up in, as being in a higher rank means certain benefits. At that moment, a girl walks in saying it's all terrible. With a grin, she introduces herself as Rinia, and tells Yusung it's nice to see him. Yusung politely smiles and greets Rinia. Rinia, with an excited look, says she has something to tell Yusung. She then requests Yusung to marry her. Hearing this, Yusung is puzzled. Saiwoo tells Rinia that Yusung doesn't understand jokes, while Rinia claims she isn't joking. She also makes it clear that she is there to see Yusung, not Saiwoo. Saiwoo asks Rinia if she is curious about who Yusung's partner is, which she affirms. Saiwoo then warns Rinia not to get too surprised once she finds out. As Yusung reveals his partner's name, Hanajima Sumire, Rinia instantly gives a bewildered look. Yusung, who seems confused, asks why everyone seems so surprised to learn who his partner is. Saiwoo tries to explain the reason but stammers and becomes silent. Meanwhile, Rinia, thinking hard, says that it's not like everyone in the class shuns Sumire. She explains that Sumire is thought to be a shy girl by everyone as she rarely speaks and raises her head. When Sumire first arrived, her speaking tone made Rinia and others think they should help Sumire get used to the class. But on the very first day Sumire transferred to Jain Academy, a weird rumor started to spread. One day, late at night when all students had left, one male student went back to his class to take something he had forgotten. Doing so, that student saw Sumire letting off ominous energies and scribbling something into her notebook, all alone. The next day, someone saw Sumire drop her handkerchief. That student tried to return the handkerchief, but Sumire disappeared. While holding the handkerchief, the student felt odd and found it filled with hairs upon examination. Along with these, there are a lot more rumors. For instance, Sumire transferred from Japan after she hospitalized her entire class there. After narrating all this, Rinia claims that she doesn't believe in these rumors and asks Yusung if he knows why. Trying to look interested, Yusung asks why. Rinia whispers that unlike what all the scary rumors suggest, Sumire is super weak, so weak she is afraid of almost everything. Rinia says she never thought Sumire would be so weak, while Saiwoo mentions that he heard Sumire was the ace of class in Japan. Yusung looks interested in learning more about Sumire and wants to hear more directly from her. At that moment, someone comes and apologizes to Yusung. Both Rinia and Saiwoo are puzzled by this. It's Sumire, who is apologizing to Yusung for being his partner. Sumire repeats her apology and begins tearing up. Rinia and Saiwoo are embarrassed, realizing Sumire heard their whole conversation. Sumire says Yusung should be super disappointed for getting someone weak like her for a partner. Rinia and Saiwoo both stand up and make excuses to get away from there. Now, only Yusung and Sumire are the ones remaining. After some silence, Yusung suggests they take a walk, which Sumire agrees to. They go outside in the gardens where Yusung goes to buy drinks for them while Sumire sits on the bench. Yusung hands over the drink to Sumire, who thanks him. Sumire takes a long swig of the juice and admits that she is weak but also firmly denies that all the rumors about her are wrong. She claims that she stayed behind in class because she was busy writing her ledger. She also explains that the hair she was carrying around is because of her trait. Looking puzzled, Yusung asks her about her trait. Sumire says that her trait is Controller of the Undead, a specialized black magic trait that focuses on the undead. Saying so, she stands up and claims that she can only use one skill, and to use that skill, she needs to make an offering of hair. Sumire then pulls out a strand of her hair and holding it up, begins chanting a statement. The hair strand begins to glow, which Sumire drops to the ground. Once the hair touches the ground, dark and muddy-like substance begins forming there. Little by little, the fluid increases while Yusung watches in silence, with a disgusted kind of look on his face. After a moment, an undead appears in front of them, its eyes glowing. Sumire demonstrates her trait, and summons a nervous-looking skeleton. She also claims that there's a big problem with this skill. And to demonstrate, she commands the skeleton to attack the tree in front of it. The skeleton obeys Sumire's command and creates a fist. It then launches a powerful punch right at the tree's trunk. However, in doing so, the skeleton's bones all crumble and its body gets disassociated as Sumire shrieks that it's as she thought. Meanwhile, Yusung begins analyzing this skill of her and thinks deeply about it. Within seconds, he cracks what the problem. Yusung, in a kinder tone, points out that Sumire has no friends. Hearing this, Sumire turns red as she begins to stammer but doesn't deny Yusung's assumption. With a gloomy face, Sumire says that she is a weak student with a weird need to collect hair. Yusung assumes that Sumire must have tried to collect other students' hair in Japan, which is why she had to leave and come to Korea. Yusung also believes that's why it must have been difficult for her to ask for help since other students are more skilled than her. Yusung then calls Sumire and gives her a strand of his hair. Looking surprised, Sumire asks if it's okay, and Yusung assures her he is fine. Yusung also reminds her that it's her method, hearing which she seems deeply grateful. Sumire gives a concern seeing the skeleton she summoned using Yusung's hair. She notices that the skeleton now is very different from the one she summoned earlier. She then commands this skeleton to attack the tree. Heeding her order, the skeleton turns around to face the tree. The skeleton then launches a powerful punch at the tree's trunk, leaving a punch mark there. But this time, the skeleton doesn't crumble into pieces like before. Sumire is bewildered as she sees the tree suddenly explode into smithereens. Unable to believe this, she mutters that it's impossible. Sumire says she could only mimic around 30% of the original's ability, while Yusung replies that this should be enough to be helpful. Sumire stares at Yusung and gives an appreciative look at him. She then grabs his hand and requests if he can give her 10 more of his hairs. Meanwhile, back in his office, the headmaster is looking at the screen of what seems like a map with a few round dots on it. At that moment, Xiao walks in as the principal tells him he was waiting for him and asks if it's his first time being a test supervisor. Xiao affirms and claims he has made every necessary preparation to avoid any mistakes as the principal reminds him there's only a one thing dangerous on the Jewel Island. Xiao says they have given enough warnings so the students don't walk in by accident. The principal mentions that last year a first-year student fearlessly entered and cleared that, and Xiao says he knows that student is the current student council president. Xiao explains that news of Shin Haeyun has reached Skyscraper Academy, while the principal calls her a born genius from the Shurno family. The principal also claims that only a monster can kill that monster on the island. A large ship is sailing on the ocean under a clear sky. Adela is standing on the deck, enjoying the ride as her hair blows in the wind. She has her eyes closed, but quickly opens them when someone asks what she is doing. A girl standing behind her, named Kim Yuna, asks Adela why she has a serious face. However, Adela remains silent, causing Yuna to look cross and ask if Adela is ignoring her. Yuna then steps in front of Adela, blocking her path, and suggests a match, noting a nearby training area. Adela keeps silent for a moment before saying that it's only been 3 days. Yuna, looking puzzled, asks what Adela means. Adela explains that it's only been 3 days since Yuna lost a match with her. Despite this, Yuna presses Adela for a rematch, but Adela doesn't want one. Annoyed, Adela asks why Yuna is so persistent, to which Yuna replies that she hates losing. The two of them exchange intense gazes. At that moment, Adela hears someone mention the name Yusung, causing her and Yuna to turn sideways. They see Yusung walking along with his 3 friends, all laughing and looking happy. Yuna recognizes Yusung as the new transfer student. She then looks over at Adela and notices that Adela is continuously staring at Yusung. Yuna points out that she's surprised to see Adela show such interest in the new transfer student. But she remarks that it's understandable since Yusung, the disciple of the Fist King, had defeated Adela's grandfather. Adela tells Yuna that this has nothing to do with her. Yuna shrugs and says that one can never be sure. She leans in closer to Adela and mutters that Jaehyun's number 1 can change anytime. Adela pushes Yuna aside and reminds her that if that happens, Yuna will fall to 3rd place. With this, Adela walks away while Yuna shouts at her to stop. Yuna gives a displeased look and shrieks angrily at Adela's attitude. She tiescaes and mutters that it's all annoying. And with a serious look, she shifts her gaze to Yusung. Currently, the ship is headed towards Jewel Island. Saiwoo is explaining the details regarding the island to the others. The true identity of Jewel Island is a rank 7 boss monster called the Abyss Whale. It's a huge monster that can devour a cruise ship in a single bite. Long ago, that monster was subjugated by the Fist King and other legendary hunters. Rinia asks how the whale became Jewel Island. Samaya raises her hand and explains that it's because of the whale's residual mana. Saiwoo confirms this, adding that due to the residual mana, the whale's corpse absorbed the surrounding reef's attributes and became a large island. As a result, mana-infused plants and animals were born on the island. As time passed, many animals and plants appeared, creating a whole ecosystem. The reason the island was called Jewel Island is that all the monsters there had jewel-like or on their bodies. Yusung asks if it's because the reef reacted to mana, but Saiwoo says it's still not confirmed. Saiwoo then shows the scoreboard, indicating different ranked monsters and their point values. Rinia marvels at the golem's 200 points, while Saiwoo explains that a low-rank class can't catch a golem, as it's a rank 3 boss. Saiwoo reminds them that their goal is only to go for rank 1 or rank 2 monsters and play it safe. The 3 clap in appreciation of Saiwoo's presentation. With this, Saiwoo suggests they enjoy the cruise now, as they might not get another chance. He also mentions there's plenty of delicious food to try and new experiences to enjoy. Yusung and the others are currently enjoying trying different food items. They all seem amazed at how delicious everything is. Despite already being full, they keep on eating and eating. They begin going through the desserts, and at this point, they are stuffed. Finally, they are unable to take another bite, being too full. The night has fallen, and the 4 of them are sitting outside on benches on the deck of the ship. Saiwoo gives a huge sigh and says he ate too much, while Rinia says she might throw up. Only Yusung looks alright and smiling, says it was fun. Saiwoo and Rinia decide to rest and leave as Yusung and Samire bid them good night. Samire, who seems to be blushing, looks over at Yusung through the corner of her eyes. She says that she felt the time passed very quickly today. Yusung agrees, saying he hasn't felt such joy since living in the mountains, while Samire adds they'll arrive at Jewel Island the next day. Samire looks gloomy as she claims she doesn't want to be a burden on Yusung. But she quickly apologizes for talking negatively at such a happy moment. She explains that she always worries when she's too happy because she fears she'll mess things up. Yusung reassuringly tells Samire that it's all okay, causing her to give a surprised look. Yusung tells her not to blame herself, as everyone makes mistakes, and says he will always help her since they are partners. Samire is touched hearing this and, blushing red, tells Yusung he is very kind. She then claims that Yusung will never make a mistake, prompting Yusung to question if he really won't. Hearing the word mistake, a Yusung flashes back to his childhood, recalling silly errors like capturing a bear cub or eating poisonous mushrooms. Not just that, one day Yusung had worn a pocket on his head and received a scolding from his master. Thinking about all these, Yusung claims he had made a lot of mistakes as well. Samire is shocked to learn Yusung once made mistakes, and Yusung explains that his master always corrected him. Yusung claims out that his master is a very important person in his life. Samire says she understands Yusung's feelings. She also admits that her family is very important to her as well. Looking saddened, Samire says she hasn't seen her family since she transferred, and Yusung asks if she misses them. Samire admits she misses them but says it's alright since it was her own decision to come to Jaehyun. She also mentions that she always looks at photos of her family. Saying so, she asks Yusung if he wants to see those photos. And she shows Yusung her family photo, explaining who each person is. She looks pleased as she points out that her siblings are very cute, which Yusung agrees with. Samire says that unlike her, her sister is very mischievous, and at that moment, Yusung asks if he can ask her a question. Yusung questions her about why she transferred to such a faraway place. Yusung also makes it clear that he doesn't believe the rumors that Sumire hurt her classmates. Sumire suddenly looks very nervous as her eyes widen in concern. With this, she begins to explain the truth about what actually happened. Sumire begins explaining how she suddenly lost control of her trait at her previous academy. A dark, powerful aura escaped her and accidentally summoned skeletons. Her classmates were all terrified and ran away from her. Sumire was left all alone in tears. Some of her classmates were injured and they put all the blame on her. They called her shameless and pointed out that all of it happened because she collects hair. Sumire was unable to talk back or defend herself. She began crying that she didn't mean any of it. But in the end, she ended up running away from everyone. Relaying this tragic backstory, Sumire is in tears as Yusung expresses his sympathy for her. Yusung then holds Sumire's hand and tells her not to say anything as it's causing her pain. Sumire looks appreciatively at Yusung and apologizes. Yusung says it's alright and claims everyone has something in their lives they want to hide. Sumire becomes silent for a moment, her cheeks turning red in nervousness. And she addresses Yusung and tells him he is very attentive. Early the next morning, the sun has just risen as the ship finally arrives at Jewel Island. The island is glistening in the morning sun, looking very heavenly as a flock of birds flies above it. Instructor Xiao looks up at the birds as he stands on the deck. He closes his eyes and breathes in the island air, muttering that they've finally arrived. He then gazes at Jewel Island, its magnificent colored crystals sparkling in the sunlight. Saiwu looks terrified as he runs alone through the island's forest. He continues sprinting forward, and the look on his face suggests he is running from something. Looking hopeless, he bellows out for someone to help him. But he is currently in the deepest part of the woods, all alone with nobody to hear him. It's the first day on Jewel Island. Sumire, who looks nervous, is staring at the tissue in her hand, inside which she has probably kept the hairs. She is currently in middle of the test. Earlier that day, after the students disembarked, Xiao gathered them to give information regarding the test. He explained that the size of the jewel depends on a monster's ranking, and a higher rank means more points. Whenever a student puts the jewel in their pocket, they receive the points. Xiao pointed out that the rules are simple: students have to gather as many jewels as they can within 2 hours. Sumire feels like she is useless and doesn't want to be a burden for Yusung. Meanwhile, Yusung calls out to Sumire and suggests they go separate ways for now. Sumire says she understands they need to gather jewels separately. Yusung reminds Sumire she has his hair and assures her she won't have problems with even rank 3 monsters. He grabs her hands and tells her not to be nervous. He also tells Sumire she can do it, causing her to blush in admiration. With this, Yusung waves Sumire goodbye and walks away. Sumire watches in silence as Yusung disappears into the forest, trying to convince herself that she can do it. She looks at the tissue in her hand and notes that she has Yusung's hair in it, deciding to use one now. At that very moment, something comes charging towards Sumire from behind, and she is unaware of it. At the last moment, Sumire hears the noise and, in puzzlement, turns around. She gives a frightened squeal as something comes crashing onto her.